Hello and welcome to this video on analyzing characters. Today I'm going to use this graphic organizer as a pre-writing strategy for character analysis, and I will be using the acronym STEAL. I'm going to choose a character from the novel The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho and discuss how the character develops using this acronym. So I'm not going to do a complete analysis, I'm just going to show you a few examples of how to effectively use this writing strategy. As we discuss the character in terms of reading, this would be our third or fourth reading to develop our character analysis. The character analysis is coming after our first read. Our first read is for basic comprehension to make sure we understand the plot, what's going on in our story, who the characters are. We've already taken time to identify any unknown words. And also, we have completed a second reading by rereading key passages during our discussions in class. So this, as we're going through the novel again, we already know what we think of a character. And in terms of being a reader, we already have our thoughts and our opinions about the characters and who they are, so we can talk about them in terms of analysis. And this will be our third or fourth reading as we dig back into the novel to find excerpts to use as examples through our character analysis. My character analysis is that Santiago's character becomes more mature and considerate as he pursues his personal legend. So this is my response to the character analysis prompt where I'm talking about who the character is. So this is my opinion of Santiago's character, and I believe that he becomes more mature and he becomes more considerate throughout his journey as the novel develops over time. So my job now is to dig back in and find examples that support this response. The reader's interpretation or understanding of a character is the reader's conclusive perception of who a character is based on inferences, information in the text, plus prior knowledge. So you can choose different adjectives to describe this character and to talk about how any character in any story develops throughout the course of their stories or their adventures, but you have to be able to find evidence to support that answer. So that's why we need to rely on our inferencing and conclusion skills to be able to come up with an accurate analysis. So I'm going to dig back into the novel and prove to you that my response is accurate. For analyzing character, I'm going to use the pre-writing strategy and the acronym STEAL. So what I've done is I'm going to choose Santiago. So I'm going to put his name in the center of my graphic organizer here. And then I need to find examples from the text to support my analysis. So if there is any information in there that's going to help me visualize what the character looks like and that's useful for supporting my response, then those examples would be included in the graphic organizer in that bubble. For says, again, I'm looking for examples, dialogue, quotation marks. Anything that the character says will be inside of quotation marks, and I can pull that dialogue out to support an analysis of the character's speech. What a character thinks. This information can come from a narrator. In our novel, we have an omniscient narrator, so we have a narrator who's kind of all-knowing and able to tell us exactly what Santiago's thinking. We can also find this type of omniscient narrator is useful in identifying other character traits, but if you have a novel that you're reading that has a first-person narrator, then you're going to know specifically what's inside that character's head, just like you do with a limited, third-person limited narrator that's limited to a particular character. We have the advantage in an omniscient novel to know what many characters think, including Santiago, which is the character that I've chosen. What a character thinks is going to show us information about that character's personality, also what motivates that character, and sometimes you can get what a character thinks from a soliloquy. So even if it is an objective narrator or it's third person limited and you're looking at a character whose perspective is not part of the narration, if the character gives a soliloquy or maybe a monologue or something like that, you can get information about what a character thinks. A soliloquy, you see that a lot in drama. It's when a character talks to him or herself, and you can get some information about what a character thinks, and you can get insight into that character's mind as well. Effects on others. These are characters' relationships, their interactions. You're looking at what other characters think, say, or do about the character so that you can really get how the character is impacting others. In actions, you're looking at characters' behaviors, perhaps their response to conflict, so that can give you some insight into the character's development as well. For my character, I am going to focus primarily on the lesson of love that he learns as he pursues his personal legend. And again, I'm trying to support my response that he becomes more mature and considerate as he pursues his personal legend. And I'm actually going to look at two specific examples about what he thinks and what he does to show this character analysis, and then I will share with you how I could take it one step further in my analysis and talk about effects on others. So again, my character is Santiago, and I'm looking at his relationship, what he thinks about the merchant's daughter, and I'm going to contrast that with Fatima and how he acts around her. So my first example here, and you can see I've included the annotations from my novel, so my hard copy of the novel. I took a picture there so you can see the close reading strategy as I was reading through the novel. Again, this is a third or fourth reading as I dig back into the novel to find examples to support my character analysis. So you can see my first and second readings included in this image here, where I've highlighted information, or I've made annotations in the margin, and I did that in my first couple of readings as I was developing my ideas and questioning the text and taking some notes. So this time I'm going to reread it again, looking for specific examples to support my character analysis. So actually, he was thinking about shearing his sheep in front of the merchant's daughter so that she could see that he was someone who was capable of doing difficult things. He had already imagined the scene many times. Every time, the girl became fascinated when he explained that the sheep had to be sheared from back to front. He also tried to remember some good stories to relate as he sheared the sheep. Most of them he had read in books, but he would tell them as if they were from his personal experience. She would never know the difference because she didn't know how to read. So he also tried to remember some good stories to relate as he sheared the sheep. Most of them he had read in books, but he would tell them as if they were from his personal experience. I'm going to pull that quote out of the passage in the novel, and I'm going to put it on my graphic organizer. So I'm trying to organize how I'm going to approach my written response for my character analysis, and this is showing me something that he thinks. He's thinking about some of the stories that he's read in books, and his plan is to tell the merchant's daughter that these stories actually happened to him. So he's going to lie to her, which creates some dramatic irony because as the reader now I know something that another character in the story doesn't know. I know that he's going to deceive her. So it's time for me now to start writing it out. Again, my answer or my response is that Santiago's character becomes more mature and considerate as he pursues his personal legend. So I've chosen an example, and I need to explain how that example supports my response. Santiago's thoughts about the merchant's daughter show that he is immature and inconsiderate. How? Well, when Santiago thinks about the merchant's daughter, he tried to remember some good stories to relate as he sheared the sheep. Most of them he had read in books, but he would tell them as if they were from his personal experience. So Santiago plans to deceive the merchant's daughter by telling her made-up stories in order to impress her. So I found this example directly from the story, in which Santiago plans to be deceptive. He's going to lie. He wants to trick the merchant's daughter. And this shows that he's really immature. He's not considerate of her. He doesn't respect her. And so I need to explain how this particular moment in the story, these thoughts that Santiago's having, show that he's not mature and show that he's not considerate. So that's what I'm going to do to make the connection in my explanation. Now, my analysis, remember, is that he becomes more mature and considerate. So I've shown that he's not. I show that with what he was thinking early on in the novel when he thinks about the merchant's daughter. So I need to take it a step further now and really prove it. Prove that he becomes more mature and considerate, that he doesn't continue to be an immature kind of jerk throughout the entire novel. So let's look at an example of something that he does when he meets Fatima. And again, you can see a picture there of my novel for when I was reading the story, and I did some highlighting. I took annotations again to, make sure that I understood what I was reading and to pull out some key moments. So when I go to do something like a character analysis, I'm looking for those moments that I pulled out, the things that I highlighted, the notes that I took to really help me find what it is I need to look at. So this excerpt says that the boy went to the well every day to meet with Fatima. He told her about his life as a shepherd, about the king, and about the crystal shop. They became friends, and except for the 15 minutes he spent with her, each day seemed that it would never pass. So here he told her about his life as a shepherd, about the king, and about the crystal shop. They became friends. So this is different. The way that he behaves with Fatima is not the same that we saw in the previous excerpt early on in the novel when he was with the merchant's daughter. So this is something that he does. This is a behavior that I see of Santiago later in the novel. So I'm going to go ahead and organize that on my graphic organizer as an example of something that he does. And I'm always thinking back to what my answer is, that he becomes more mature and considerate. And I feel that what he does later in the novel and his reaction or his interactions with this other woman show that he really has changed. So I'm going to take some time to add that to my response. And you can see the purple and the green there is my original idea that really set up his immaturity and his disrespect. But later in the novel, Santiago discovers true love when he meets Fatima. His actions show that he is more mature and capable of having a real relationship. Well, how? Well, rather than deceiving Fatima, quote, he told her about his life as a shepherd, about the king, and about the crystal shop. They became friends. So Santiago tells Fatima true stories about his life, which shows that he is honest with her and he values her. So this moment here shows some growth and maturity of the character, because before, when he thought he was in love with the merchant's daughter, he wanted to deceive her, to trick her. He didn't respect her, and he was going to tell her made-up stories just to impress her. But later, he meets somebody that he does have a real relationship with. He becomes friends with her. He falls in love with her really at the moment that he sees her, and he tells her about his real adventures and the real things that he did, no matter how exciting they were. I'm sure every day at the crystal shop wasn't, an epic adventure, right? If you think back to those scenes from the story in which he had those interactions with the merchants and the things that were going on then. So again, whenever you're analyzing a character, it can be helpful to organize the information in something like a graphic organizer, to create some kind of outline or to visually put your information into a graphic organizer, something like that can be really helpful to help you visualize your examples, and then really you just have to fill in the explanation, make the connection between the examples you find and your response. So you're trying to convince the reader that your response is accurate and that you're right. And so just make those connections through the explanation. If I wanted to, I could dig in deeper and take a look at the physical description or the looks that I can infer of Santiago, what he looks like, how has he changed over the course of the novel. In this novel, it's been several years since his journey began, so looking at how he's changed physically can also show physical maturity as well. What he says, what does he say to other characters? Is he sincere? Is he rude? How does that help to support my answer that he's more mature, that he's more considerate? His effects on others, and I could dig in and look at how the merchant's daughter reacts to Santiago, or how Fatima reacts to Santiago, or any other character in the story that can show growth and development, maturity and consideration. What do other characters think of him? How do they treat him? What do they do or say about him or to him? So all things that I could go back and use as considerations for examples to better support my answer using this acronym. If you have any questions, make sure you check with your teacher. Don't sweat it. We're here to help.